Hey friends, so this week's episode of the Yarn Tour takes us on a little bit different journey. Originally, I had planned for 5 stops on the western side of Raleigh and Greensboro area. Unfortunately, between the tropical storm and some of the other weather events that had localized flooding, one of these stores has closed and isn't certain that they will be able to reopen. So Yarns, etc. was not able to be visited, and hopefully they will be able to recover. Their social media says that they pulled out all the yarns that were not affected and then also bagged up all the affected yarns. Hopefully they are able to wash it and maybe sell it as damaged, get some, partial recovery out of that. I don't know how that works. But then another yarn shop that had temporarily closed due to flooding and water conservation was reopened. We were not able to make it to Cribbleman and Alpacas because they're only open for a couple hours and we were outside of their time frame. But we did make it to 3 stops. We started our day at the zoo. So by the time you see me, we are hot and sweaty. So faces are all red and all that good stuff. So I will throw some zoo pictures in and then we will check back in as we start at our first yarn stop. All right, so yarn tour for today. We started out at the zoo and now we are at the Cozy Skein. Says their grand opening was June 14th. Excited to meet fellow knitters and crocheters. Our yarn selection is diverse, ranging from local dyes like Cirella and Apex and Queen City yarn to Kilbourne woolens, Irish merino, quince, and milbrigo. I probably butchered all of those. So not quite sure which little shop it is here. Super cute little street, and we will check it out. All right, so at our last yarn stop for the day, Freeman's Creative is bringing Durham the best selection of quality craft and DIY supplies, serving everyone from brand new beginners to seasoned professionals. So this is in a little strip mall area, and we will go on in. So we had a good time at the zoo. Unfortunately, a lot of animals were off exhibit. I wish that there was a better way to find out who is on and off exhibit, as opposed to walking all the trails and getting to the enclosure and going, we can't find anybody. So that was disappointing. I don't know, is it training? Are they feeding? Did nobody just want to come out and play with us today? But we didn't see rhinos, we didn't see zebras, we didn't see ostriches. A lot of things that we didn't see, whether it was because they were huddled into an area of the yard that we couldn't see, or, I don't know. But rhinos are big. You wouldn't think I would miss those guys, but we could not find them. So the yarn tour today was a little different. As I said, things our originally mapped out plan didn't quite go, and certainly I wasn't even sure that this day was going to happen after putting on tires on the van last week, but we made it work. We will definitely see if there's a day for Charlotte next week or not, but we started off, the first stop was the Cozy Skein. And this is the first not standalone store that we have been to. So this location was inside of I'm not quite sure what you call it, but a multi-vendor location. So you pay for like that booth rental, and somebody just mans a cash register. It was not what I was expecting. The description did not necessarily allude to that. When we walked up, there's a picture of just the sidewalk. And so we walked down the block looking for a door that had the business name on it. And all of a sudden we see a sign in the window, but there's no door. And then it says, there's a door that has an arrow and points us back to about where we parked. So we then walk back and we realize this is a multi sort of thing. It's not even kind of a pass-through sort of thing to where, they're individual shops that can be closed off. This is truly just a big warehouse kind of thing with little booths inside of it. So not at all what I was expecting. Certainly it changes the atmosphere, and it really gives me pause. I have thought about renting a booth space in one of these type of environments, but it really makes me think about that again. There's no personality in there. There's no interaction in there. And I don't know that I want my things in that kind of atmosphere. I enjoy interacting with the individuals that I'm selling to, and just to have it wasn't sterile, but it was you can spiff up your booth as much as you want, but it was a very bland atmosphere. So it was very different not having the shop owner there to interact with. Almost a turn off. So I ended up just picking up again some little needle ends. I did put the ones, grab my other, come on. I did put these on from the shop the last week. So I just picked up a couple more, but I wasn't really inspired. A lot of the brands of yarns we have seen in other locations thus far. So it wasn't what I was anticipating. So that was the Cozy Skein. Then the Hillsborough Yarn Shop. Parking was a little rough. I had a hard time finding parking. They talked about parking on their information sheet, parking being down by a market. Well, then I started to turn into a parking lot, and then it said for market patrons only. So then I kept going down the street, which ended up dead ending at a parking garage, and I parked like in a parking spot that teed to the parking garage. There weren't any signs that said I couldn't. I pulled up the city parking map, and it didn't say that I couldn't park there, but it didn't necessarily say that I could park there. And it just said for Orange County patrons only. It's like, well, I'm shopping in Orange County. I hope this is okay. So we then walked the block and a half back to the store, and it was okay. Certainly every store has a different atmosphere, and I had never been in a independently owned yarn shop prior to this, and I'm certainly finding what I enjoy and what I look for now in these yarn shops, which is good. I would have never had these experiences without this yarn tour. So the Hillsborough Yarn Shop had a wide variety of materials. They had the needle felting materials. They had just a couple of things. They had a couple things of a lot of options. They also only had one item out for each variety, and then said that there was more stock in the back. So that can be difficult if you need a lot of skeins of something and you want to verify lot numbers and things like that. Not everybody enjoys interacting or feels comfortable interacting that much with staff in different stores to be asking for help, and that could be very concerning. Certainly my younger daughter would have issues asking for that kind of assistance. So that could be problematic, especially with these specialty yarns that are hand done and only so much per batch. Trying to verify that you've got enough of the same colorway and all that kind of stuff, same dye lot, could be difficult for a larger garment project. So could be it's just a different experience at each store. They had a basket of some clearance stuff. And again, I do not have projects for all of this stuff. I just, I'm trying to support these shops as I go to these. So these were originally tagged for $14.25. They were then essentially $14.50, one of each, I guess. But then they were in a $10 bin for clearance. So picked up, these are called Twisted Sisters. Our business is in dyeing. And so this is a jazz monochromatic variegate, 100% fine wool. And so this one is Jacaranda. Again, Twisted Sisters. So just a purple. And then the other one is Agave. So more tealish. But I thought they were pretty. So these are the two that we came off with there. And then our last stop was Freeman's Creative. And this store ended up being a much bigger craft store than what I had expected. So this had a small assortment of fabric. It had some drawing supplies. It had a display of the felting. It had a aisle of yarn. It had a much wider variety than any other store that we've been to. The others have been much more into the fiber arts for yarns, felting, that kind of stuff. The Freeman's Creative had a much more variety for crafting in general. So it was really nice. We found lots of needle felting kits. Unfortunately, with this tour, budget is definitely part of the process here. I do not have the budget to spend $30, $50 at every single one of these stores. And I have to be selective at what I'm doing. And certainly as we come across some of these different kits, some of these needle felting kits are $50. Some of them are beautiful as they are in the cross stitch are they? The circle things that you put your cross stitch in that hold it tight. So, and just so pretty in the display items. And they've got pots with like succulents in them, and it's all needle felted and such pretty things. But again, these are $50. And as I stop at 3 to 5 stores along this, I can't spend $50 to $80 at each of these stores. So it's something to keep in mind and revisit later. But the kids would really like to do some of those needle felting kits. And they also had books of needle felting, some different animals, and different just techniques for needle felting, which was really interesting. So again, things to keep in mind. I just have to be kind of conscious of the money that I'm spending. And while I want to support the stores that I'm visiting and all of that, I do have to be mindful of putting food on my table as well. So I did enjoy going there. They had a couple of employees in there. The employees there were much younger, maybe summer college students. I did not ask a whole lot of questions, so I don't know how knowledgeable or in-depth into the crafting world community they are, but definitely much younger than 95% of the store employees that I have met at every other location. Some of the employees, maybe a couple were my demographic, but the majority have been my parents, more of my parents' age. So hopefully, it's good to see the young people in the crafting communities and taking that initiative. Certainly we would see them in the big box stores. The smaller independently owned have less opportunity to employ additional. So it's good to see that those opportunities there. So at Freeman's, I picked up Cascade Yarns Superwash Wave. This is a wool. It makes me think of like an Easter egg. It is just so pretty. I just really love this. I could see this being a kind of a shawl for spring. So super pretty. This is a weight 4, so certainly a versatile. They call this springtime. How fitting. So this is all that I picked up there, but so pretty. And then we had to skedaddle. We were cutting it pretty close on time for getting back to our area for my daughter's dance class. Traffic was horrendous getting out of the Raleigh Triangle, and I just really dislike traffic. Somebody had made a comment about how individuals in our smaller communities comment on traffic and how they would just die if they had ever encountered traffic on things like the Dan Ryan Expressway in Chicago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, memories of the Dan Ryan. And then I comment on this Facebook post, and then like 36 hours later, I'm sitting in standstill traffic inside Raleigh. But there was nobody passing me on the shoulder at 110 miles per hour like they would in Chicago. So I suppose there are, there's still pros there. In other fun news, so there were no drawings or giveaways or extra perks for these 3 stops that we did yesterday. But we have won a couple drawings, and those are coming in the mail. So stay tuned for that, and we will be having some fun mail coming. I'm looking forward to that. And that is it for right now, and I will catch up with you guys next time. Take care.